All right, so download the document. This is a brand new document to us. Open up a Cami tab. Drag and drop your notes up there. And you'll see that we are looking at part 4 of major sociological theories. The other thing you will need to do is click on the link to join Pear Deck. I'll get the code up for you here in just a second. There is your code. Give you guys a few seconds to get in there. And let's continue on. Again, we're looking at symbolic interactionism. The theories we've looked at so far: functionalism, conflict theory, especially if we're talking about Marxist conflict theory. These are what are called macro-level theories. Right? Kind of like macroeconomics is a macro-level theory. It looks at large structures in society, and it sees them as the most important factors for explaining what's going on. As reflected in this old political cartoon of monopoly devouring the United States. Functionalists could look at that as an institution. Right? Government of the United States, one of those institutions, right? Economic institutions like monopolies being the others. All right, for conflict theory, especially Marxist conflict theory, we'll be talking about economic classes. The bourgeoisie who control the monopolies, the means of production, right, the mines, the factories, all of that stuff. They represent the major force that explains the fate of the United States. Symbolic interactionism, on the other hand, is at the opposite end of that spectrum. It's not macro level, but micro level. And for micro-level theories, individuals are the most important thing. Like how macroeconomics tries to use big things to explain unemployment. Whereas microeconomics tries to figure out how consumers make individual decisions about what kind of groceries to buy, brand names versus generic, that kind of thing. The founder of symbolic interactionism is George Herbert Mead. And this theory, this theoretical perspective, emphasizes individuals and more specifically their relationships with one another. That's the interactionism part of this. And what symbolic interactionists claim is that communication in the form of symbols and language this communication is how people comprehend the social world around them. Including how we interact with things. This isn't just about how we interact with other people, but how we interact with things. Because what things mean to us is very importantly shaped by our social interactions with other people involving those things. Take, for instance, somebody who grew up shooting for recreation. Maybe they did target shooting. Maybe they did trap shooting with a shotgun for fun. Did this with their family. Right? They would probably have positive feelings about firearms. Right? They would be a thing to be respected and cherished and thought of as a source of a lot of good memories. Whereas somebody who grew up in a war zone might feel very, very differently, might feel rather negatively about firearms. Right? They might be a scary thing that you want nothing to do with. I mean, I could see this in my own family. So my grandfather fought in World War II. He was not on the ground soldier. He was little guy like me, so he was a tail gunner in a B-17 in one of those little transparent bubbles. But that experience led him, he didn't really want anything to do with guns. Just didn't, right? On the other hand, his younger brother, who didn't serve in war, really loved guns. I mean, he loved to target shoot. He was a collector of like Western action pistols and stuff like that. Very different feelings, right, about guns based on different interactions around those things. Mead further argued, and other symbolic interactionists as well, that not just people's perceptions, but also their behaviors are shaped by the social world. To put this slightly differently, culture influences our perceptions, how we see the world, how we see things and people and events, and our beliefs about the world. And those, in turn, influence how we act. They shape our behavior. For example, in America, if you're speaking with someone, you maintain eye contact. And even when I'm speaking to lots of you, I'm supposed to look around the room to make repeated eye contact with my audience. Right? Why do we do that? Because it's considered good manners. Right? If Josh is talking to me, but Josh is looking at the floor, or he's kind of looking over here, it's going to be weird to me. And I'm going to think, well, maybe Josh is weird, or maybe he's just disrespectful, but something. Right? He's not following good manners. Right? On the other hand, if you're in Japan, people avoid eye contact when speaking with you for the exact same reason that we hold eye contact in the U.S. It's good manners. Different culture, different perceptions, different beliefs, different behaviors. If Josh is talking to me and we are both Japanese and in Japan, right, Josh is, and I looked this up, right, Josh is supposed to stare like here, right, below my face. Because if he's making eye contact, that can be seen as just rude, maybe even aggressive, right? And so he won't do it. Is everybody finished with that slide? All right, got it, Chris? Okay. Here's another way of thinking about symbolic interactionism that might work, especially for those of you who are maybe in drama or have participated in one of the school plays. This comes to us from Irving Goffman, and the idea here is that the social world gives us scripts to work from. And we act out our parts in the social world based on different contexts, right? We have different scripts for different contexts. And also established patterns of behavior. How many of you swear? You use swear words. Robert, you use swear words. Shame on you, Robert. All right, I'm just kidding. No judgment, actually. All right, do you have any people that you don't swear around? Your grandparents. All right. So you can turn it off, right? You can flip that switch. All right. Yeah, me too, buddy. Me too, man. It's the same thing, right? I mean, we have different scripts. Robert's script, right, involves swear words when he's not around his grandparents. But when he's around his grandparents, different script, right? And that script does not include swear words, right? That's pretty common, right? So that's, Goffman would say that's exactly it. We have, the social world gives us scripts, and they are different depending on the context. These scripts are not something, right, that are just exactly handed to us and never change. For one thing, this was a roll of the dice in asking Robert if there were people that he would not swear around. Because I've had other students that are like, well, I swear with my grandma. She's a lot of fun, right? And that tells us that scripts can change over time. If we go back a few decades, everybody's scripts probably are going to look like Robert's. Right? But today, that's different. Right? And so they can change. Right? Partly because just a lot of words that you just would not say a few decades ago are pretty commonly used today. An example here that does not involve swear words or grandparents specifically, greetings, right? And the COVID pandemic. Okay, I don't know why the Pear Deck dropped out of this part. All right, but that's okay. If you were greeting somebody prior to the pandemic, what would you do? You do what now? All right, you would shake their hand. Right? Would that greeting be acceptable now? No. Right? So the blank that goes with this one in your notes would be handshake. And the answer there is no. Okay. That's a pretty abrupt change of script, actually, right? For us to stop doing that. Have we replaced the handshake? Yes. What do we do now instead? Wave. You might wave. What else? See, I've been had to resort to this, and it was something prior to the pandemic I absolutely hated. Right? The fist bump. Hate the fist bump. Right? It just seemed. I won't get started on that. Right? But I hated the fist bump, and now, right, do it all the time because of the pandemic. What else? And the even weirder, the elbow bump, right? You guys know people who do this? And the pastor at my church does this, right? I mean, and he's like 60 years old, so I just, you would never have thought that your 60-year-old bearded pastor is going to be an elbow bumper, but now we are. And, so in the blank for what replaced the handshake, fist bump, right? Waving, elbow bump, scripts change. Let's look at some other examples, right? Because who doesn't want to look at swastikas and Hitler? So we know that the scripts can change, right? And symbolic interactionism is very much focused on how we can reshape the social world. Right? And it turns out it's the same mechanism for how we understand it. Right? Communication via language and symbols. And our interactions with other individuals. Now, it might be a little bit hard to see here, but that's a swastika, and at the heart of that swastika is the Coca-Cola logo. You think Coca-Cola is going to use the swastika in promotional merchandise anytime soon? No, right? That was probably not coming back. What about some swastika playing cards? Right? You think you're going to find those on your 21st birthday when you go to the St. Joe Frontier Casino and try your hand at blackjack?
I sure hope so.
All right, well, you're not. Sorry to disappoint, but there will not be swastikas on the playing cards at the St. Joe Frontier Casino. Right? Probably also not going to be used. Whoa, jumped a bit ahead. Well, that's all right. Not going to be used to advertise fine-eating California fruit either. Okay.
What is that?
What's what? That one?
Yeah, the bottom one.
No, that's Coca-Cola. That's old. That's an old. I don't know if that's supposed to be a bottle opener. Probably looks like a bottle opener. Because through language and symbols through interactions have changed the meaning of the swastika to what we associate with Hitler and the Nazis. Now, let me revisit your notes briefly just to make sure I've got this. You. Oh, so Jermonson, you're just go ahead and move to sit at that desk halfway between Ashland and Jermont. Oh, so we're good with that. Okay, I want you to consider the argument that maybe we'll get back to the old meaning of the swastika.
Immediately associate it with the Nazis. Hello, I'm Tim Marshall, and I've got a new paperback out, Worth Dying For, The Power and Politics of Flags. The swastika goes back a long way, certainly before it became this symbol of evil in the Chinese Book of Silk. You see comets, and some of them are spinning in such a way that you actually get the swastika in the sky, and ancient peoples will have seen this, and so it became a sign of something. And in the Indian culture, it certainly became a sign of good luck and hope. The Nazis then turned that around. I mean, they physically reversed the swastika. Then it became a symbol of evil. And that's really problematic because in our culture it's evil, but you see it over in Asia and of course it's not. And should it be banned here? That's contextual. Obviously it shouldn't be banned in a particular temple, but you might, if you want to ban it, let's say at a political level. What happened under the swastika will become ancient history, and only at that point will it fade, and its original meaning might rise. In the context of the swastika and the flag, I think in the European context we are decades, who knows, centuries away from it being without that connotation. In other parts of the world, of course, it remained what it was, a peaceful symbol.
Okay, now this is kind of too big a question for the Pear Deck, but do you think this guy's right that we'll someday stop seeing the swastika as a symbol of hate and see it as it was originally intended? Why not, Robert? Okay, so one, like, we're going to continue to be taught about the negative meanings of that symbol. Okay, yeah, and I mean, as long as that happens, it's going to make it tough. Also, are there people out there still using it for the negative meaning? Yeah, I mean, there are neo-Nazis running around doing all kinds of stuff. And as long as they're recreating that negative image, it's going to be very difficult to shift it back to being a symbol of peace, right? So yeah, I think between those two mechanisms, it just seems very unlikely. I mean, I'm just not along the lines of that guy and thinking that in a couple hundred years we'll stop talking about it, as I don't see anything I hope nothing displaces the Holocaust as like one of the worst examples of genocide in history, right? Because that would mean millions more people dying for something, right? Okay.
I think it would take some...
All right, let's look at something a little more recent. Okay, and that is the evolution of the OK hand symbol. Right? Okay, so for the discussion in the Pear Deck, and to put into your notes, as you notice, I know this is going to get a little bit tricky because we're going to have to juggle things back and forth. Okay. Well, we don't want globalization notes. All right, what did this gesture mean in the past? And I kind of said it, but when would you use this? Yeah, so to indicate that like you agree with something or that you understand, right? So if I was to say, all right, Jaden, your homework is to do these 3 things, step 1, step 2, step 3, you got it, right? And Jaden could just go, got it, right? So it used to mean okay, right? Or indicate understanding and agreement. Now, to help you answer the next question, we're going to consider this video.
The OK hand gesture has become a cultural flashpoint, transforming from an innocent sign to a hate symbol. The Anti-Defamation League officially included it in its Hate on Display database in 2019. The evolution was gradual. It started on the anonymous online message board 4chan in 2017, when a troll campaign tried to trick the media into believing the gesture was a secret symbol of white supremacy. But as the campaign spread, the sign was actually adopted by the alt-right, a term for those on the far right who embrace white nationalist views. It was then used to, quote, trigger liberals who thought the hand gesture identified secret Nazis.
The tricky part of discussing these things is that it's simultaneously incredibly stupid and incredibly consequential. We're talking about a dumb troll campaign that targeted people in order to make a group of racists online amused for a little period of time. And then at the same time, we are talking about the OK hand sign at all because of the real rise in visibility of white supremacy and racist ideas and increasing access to power of those ideas.
The concept only continued to pick up steam online and make headlines in the following years. And the intention behind every instance is hard to know. Some examples include white nationalist Richard Spencer and right-wing internet provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos. It's also been used by interns in the Trump, a writer for the fringe right website Gateway Pundit, and a Chicago Cubs fan who was later banned from Wrigley Field. However, it was the use by the Christchurch shooting suspect that marked a shift in the conversation.
The use of that hand sign by the Christchurch suspect, I think, is something that really needs to be underlined here. His use and engagement with this part of meme culture, I think, took some of the ambiguity of a lot of these things and made it harder to excuse it away. Whatever his intentions, the fact that this person who was accused of killing so many people had used this sign sort of seemed to change the tone of the discourse around it.
The OK sign isn't the first seemingly innocuous bit of culture claimed by alt-right groups. Pepe the Frog went from innocent cartoon to alt-right meme during the 2016 election, thanks to a similar online evolution. But flashing the OK sign has an additional element: its use in everyday life, including by public figures. But post-2017, the frequent use of the symbol opens the door for misinterpretation and a debate. Is it being used knowingly as a symbol of white supremacy or not?
The intersection of ambiguity and racism can be weaponized in order to manipulate the media, to manipulate popular opinion, to spread ideas into the discourse that have no place being there. That is something that has helped the OK hand sign, Pepe, any of these things like it that have some degree of ambiguity or playfulness or irony that has been baked into it, get away with spreading earnest white supremacist, Nazi, racist ideas along with them.
The confusion presents civil rights groups like the Anti-Defamation League with the challenge: how to educate people about the sign's darker meaning without giving oxygen to the movement.
The significance here is that the ADL is attempting, at least, to make this less ambiguous. It's a sign of how even ironic racism is now being taken more seriously, and as experts are asking us to look beyond the explanation of just trolling and understand how something is actually being used and how the spread of a symbol like that may carry the ideas that it's being associated with it. No matter what the ADL says, there are always going to be people who make the sign because they're unaware of this entire conversation that has played out, right? The symbol has existed long before a bunch of people on a message board decided it would be funny to trick the media into saying it was racist.
Okay, so add, you in the same place where you're responding, what does the gesture mean now?
White supremacy.
Yeah, so it's fine, throw it in the pear deck. Okay. So white supremacy has become the meaning, and if you kind of didn't catch it, because it's, if you've got your W here with those three fingers, and then the line up here for the P, white power. You got to give it to the people who started that as trolls. It's a fairly clever leap. But that's what it's come to mean. All right. Okay. We'll just add those two questions together. What started the changing of its meaning? And was that initial intent of that to create a new white supremacist gesture? Is that how it started on 4chan? They were looking to just create a new way for white supremacists to signal each other? No, right? What they were trying to do, it really was a trolling campaign because everybody used it. So you'd catch Barack Obama making a white power gesture. Does that seem like something Barack Obama is likely to do? No, but then all of a sudden you set people looking for it. Of course, what happened over time, right? Even if the initial intent was not to make a white supremacist gesture, right, it got picked up by actual white supremacists, and they used it, and then, of course, that's what its meaning has become. Okay. All right, so let's make sure, just for the sake of time, we've got this in our notes. We were okay to there. All right, so the change that started was that trolling just to kind of rile up people that were on the political left or even the political mainstream, and thinking that they were seeing secret symbols of white supremacy. And the initial intent, of course, was not actually to make it a white supremacist gesture. All right, go ahead and upload your notes there. We'll wrap up the rest of it tomorrow. Once you have done that, go find the exit slips right after this assignment. Same 7 questions, 7 points, and 7 minutes. And it is already live, so once you've uploaded, you can head straight there.
To the library.
Yeah, go ahead and take your stuff as close as we are, and you can just use that pen. No, you're fine, Jade. There you go. You're welcome.